A tenacious rebounder and role player during his time at Villanova, on one night in 1985, he became part of an iconic moment and helped the Wildcats shock the world by winning a national championship. Now he's become a program legend, almost synonymous with the school. In fact, they call him Mr. Villanova, beloved by his teammates and the next generations of Wildcats. He's Chuck Everson, and he's our guest next on Holding Over. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Holding Over. We're part of the Big East Energy Network. I'm Matt Janis. No David White this week. He has ceded his spot to a true Villanova legend, part of the 1985 National Championship team. He is Chuck Everson, also the host of the great podcast, Big East Rewind. Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, well, thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it. This is great. I'm looking at all your graphics and the way you guys looked, and you're set up now, and you're on your way. I've watched a couple of the shows on YouTube, and this is great. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, we decided we needed to bring the IQ level up a little bit in the show. That's why we decided we wanted to bring you on. And you are somebody that is so intertwined and interconnected to this Villanova program, to the school, to the community. But you're also somebody who is showing off, you were tough as a player, but showing off some toughness here, just recovered from some surgery and on the mend and able to power through it and be on this show.
Yeah, I had some hip replacement surgery back on the 11th of August, and everything went great. The people at the hospital for special surgeries are awesome, and everything they said that was going to happen happened exactly the way they said it, which is fantastic. And the doctors and nurses there were awesome, and I can't say enough good things. I've had my left hip done back in 2016, didn't have the success that I had this time so far. But I feel really good. So, and it's been a while. I know a lot of you have seen me walking around games and stuff, and at times I'm struggling with it, and all due for me, my hindrance to get this done. But I'm so happy that I got it done, and we'll be back at some games, back at the Finn in no time.
You got a couple months to make the mend, and that's the good news. You also got a visit from a former teammate I saw on social media to kind of lift your spirits.
Yeah, well, you know how that goes, Matt. I mean, our guys are really close, and people tell me all the time, "You're the glue to that team. You're the glue." But you can't have one guy be the glue. I mean, everybody's got to be involved. And I got a call from the D train, Dwayne McClain. He was on his way up from Florida, and said, "Hey, I have some time. I'm gonna be on Long Island. Are you up for having visitors?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we had some lunch, and he brought a buddy of his, and we hung out for a couple hours and laughed for 2 hours. It was just what the doctor ordered, sitting around by yourself, recovering, and people know how that is. And it was great to have one of my brothers come see me. It was a lot of fun.
And it's what makes this program so special. You hear Jay Wright when he was the steward of it for so long, embarking that knowledge and idea that you play for those that came before you, but it's the brothers that you play with that obviously you build those special relationships with. But for the first time in decades, Villanova going to be led by someone from outside the family. In fact, last time it happened was actually your coach, Rollie Massimino, which worked out pretty well. So Nova hoping that history repeats itself. But is it odd for you as a guy who has been around this program for so long now? I mean, you had Steve Lapis, who was an assistant when you were there. Then you had Jay Wright, who was obviously Raleigh's protege, and Kyle Neptune, who worked for Jay Wright for so long, to have a different voice come in leading things?
Yes and no. I mean, it's going to be different for sure, but I think all the core values and everything are going to stay the same. I was fortunate enough to go to a practice and talk with Kevin and talk with him about some stuff. And he's reached out. I mean, the first thing he did when he got the job was he had a Zoom call with all the Villanova basketball alums on it. And we must have had 70 former players on the call, which was cool. So he got an idea right then and there that this is a very powerful thing. And it's not like that at a lot of places, And, I think he's learning. I don't think he realized just how deep this whole thing goes. It's not just the guys that you played with. I'm friendly with. I go to a game. I go to a lot of games. People see me all the time on campus and everything.
You're Mr. Villanova.
I am Mr. Villanova. That's what they say. Yeah. So I hang out with Will Sheridan, who's 20 years younger than me, and Daniel Oshefu, who's 30 years younger than me. And back in the day when I first started, it was guys that were older than me, and that's how it is. And we are telling stories about the differences between Jay and Coach Mass, and it's great, to hang out with those guys. And I think Kevin really got a good idea of what it's about at Summer Jam. And the night before Summer Jam, we get together at Neil McShay was a manager on the 85 team. And he owns a place called Jack McShay's in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, on Lancaster Pike. And so we go there every year before, the day's events. And we just catch up with former players and coaches. And, it's funny because the medical team is there. Dr. Good is there. Dr. Furman's there. The trainer's there. It's not just the players and coaches. It's everybody, which is kind of cool. And so Kevin came down. Coach Willard, I asked him to come down, and he showed up with his lovely wife. And they hung out for a good couple of hours. And he was like, Chuck, I can't believe you guys are all from different eras. There's guys here that played before Coach Mass. There are guys here that played for Coach Mass, after Coach Mass. So it was great that he got to see all of that. And then he saw it, in person, live and in color, and at Summer Jam, and how great it was. We we probably had between 120 and 150 former players there. I mean, it was really good turnout.
It is remarkable to see the dedication that the former players have to the program. And I guess once it gets in your blood, it never leaves. And it's one of the most special parts about following this program over the years. When you go to the games, fans notice it all the time. It's one thing, most programs on Alumni Day, they show a lot of former players. It seems like every single game, especially when you go down to the arena in Philadelphia, it's not just a handful, it's 10s, 20s, 30s of guys that played and are out there supporting the team. And a lot of you guys don't even live local.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A lot of guys come back or try to get back as much as they can. We've had an alumni day for over 40 years where the alumni come back and take their curtain calls on the court. And we've celebrated different teams, different championship teams that were successful in other ways. And, it's been great. And now with the last 25 years or so, we have a second day, which is Summer Jam, which is a full day of basketball alumni. And, those are the things you look forward to. And, they do it. They go out of their way to, they meaning the university, goes out of their way to really make us feel comfortable and really make us feel welcome. And that's why the guys come back,
I thought one of the coolest traditions that I think it was started by Jay Wright, maybe it even predated him, but I had always heard about it from Jay, was when former players came back to watch practice, they were allowed on the floor. No one else was allowed on the floor because you guys put your blood, sweat, and tears into making all this possible for the current players. And if that didn't speak to what it means to be a Villanova player, I don't know what better could.
Well, I gotta be honest with you. Those were my favorite times, man, because you felt like you were on the team. First of all, I didn't have to announce that I was coming. I just showed up at the door, and a manager would run over. Here's a bottle of water. Here's a chair. You sit over here. You go. And I never went by myself. Usually, Mark Plansky usually accompanied me, or Brian Harrington, or Jensen, or somebody from the 85 team was always with us. So I've been doing that. Since before 2015, so you get to know the kids and you get to know the team. So if we're on a text thread, I've got 20 guys on a text thread from the 85 team. And I also have text threads from the guys that played for Jay, the guys that played for Lap, the guys that, and we'd go back and forth. And now you can have an intelligent conversation because you were at practice, because you know why the coach made a particular move or didn't make a move, or this happened, or so. And the other thing was you get to be close with the guys. So like in 15, 16, 17, when we were on that run, the 15 team was really, really good too. I mean, one mishap and we could have been in a Final Four again. All that said, but so I'm standing on the sideline and Jalen will run over and give me a little elbow shot and just point at me, and they'll all come over and say, hey, thanks for coming to see us. We appreciate you being here. And then at the end of practice, you're sitting there and, maybe it's me and Mark that particular day. And we're sitting there. He goes, "Hey, are you guys going to get in the huddle or what? Aren't you part of this team?" So we're out there with the guys in the huddle. So it's been awesome. And I'm so glad that Coach Willard is going to keep that policy. He said the only time he doesn't want us in the gym is the day after a loss, which I totally get. I totally get that, and it's interesting because I was at a couple of practices for him already, and it's a big, huge difference. First of all, the guys on the team were all great guys. They all came up and introduced themselves without being prompted. They all came over to me and said hello, and then the music starts cranking. And I'm looking at Mike Sheridan. I was with Mike Sheridan, and I go, "What the heck's going on?" He goes, "Oh, it's different times, man." I go, "So these young kids, they I guess it's like white noise to them, really. I mean, it's just something to be there." And then when it came time to teach, okay, the music was off, and let's get down to business. But when they're doing their skills and drills type of thing, the music's blaring, and I think it's a good thing. It's just different. I was just kind of taken back by it, but I got to tell you, they still are going to be a very tough, hard-nosed team. They get after it. They get up and down the floor. They've got like at least 3 or 4 guys that are eyeball to eyeball with me, which is different for the last few years. And they're mobile. They can get up and down. So it was kind of cool to see that they had they did like a 5-on-5-on-5 drill type of thing. And they had 3 big guys and the transfer that was going to go to Kentucky. What's the kid's name?
Caden Lewis?
Yeah. And him and another guy. And they were running everybody off the court because the big guys were getting it and moving the ball, and they were running the floor, and I was impressed. So listen, there's going to be some bumps along the way, but I'm really looking forward to seeing them play. I can't wait for the season to start.
They've done a fantastic job on social media, giving fans kind of an inside look behind the scenes at practice, and kind of watch the way Kevin Willard teaches and the way he connects with the players. And it's easy to forget because he's been a head coach for so long, but he's a guy straight out of the Rick Pitino tree, and obviously he grew up around coaching, so basketball has been a part of his life. Really for as long as he can remember. But when you were there, did you notice that he just seems like a special type of teacher and the way he can communicate it to the players?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's been through the ringer. He's been through the wars. I mean, when he was with Seton Hall, he got us the year we won the championship. He beat us in the Big East final. So, I mean, listen, he knows what he's doing. And I think what you're going to see is a little more up-tempo basketball, which will be very different for anybody who's a Villanova fan. We haven't had that kind of play in a long time, but which means he's going to have to go deep if he's going to play that way. And it looks like they have the people to do it. That's what's good, And again, this is first time out of the gate. You never know what you're going to get. Most of these guys came through the portal. He has a couple of guys that stayed. Hodge is one, and Perkins is the other. But I think it's just a matter of what are you going to do to get everybody to gel. Which is one of the most difficult things to do as a head coach now when you have 10 new guys on the team. And I think they're trying to get good people, not just good players, so that they want to stay for more than a year and not get out and go someplace else. I think they want to, they're trying to get guys that want to get their degrees from Villanova and not, bounce around and go get it from wherever you wind up last. You know what I mean?
It was one of the most unfortunate parts of the Cal Neptune era. Here's a guy who's taken over for a legend, and he's got to follow in his footsteps and try to continue Jay Wright's program. And yet the rules changed. And some of the reasons why Jay Wright wasn't in charge of the program anymore, couldn't necessarily do everything the same way. And I don't know. I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but it did feel a little bit like it was so year to year rather than building with any type of a long-term vision in plan. I don't necessarily need you to speak to that if you don't want to, but it does feel like Kevin Willard has kind of that million or 1,000-foot view where he's looking down and is trying to build this team, but also build a team that he can build upon for next year's group and down the line, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because you don't know who's going to leave, who's going to stay. You're constantly recruiting your own kids, which means you got to keep them happy, and nobody's happy unless they're playing. And it's hard to play 12, 13 guys. You can't. It's impossible. Somebody's not going to be happy. So that's the first thing, and the second thing is, once you start to get back on the winning track, it's easier for kids to want to stay, I think. Number one. And you got to have the right kind of kid, Matt. I mean, you got to have a kid that wants to be coached. And being coached doesn't mean that you get everything that you want. Sometimes you got to work for it, and it pays off. Look at the guys that are in the league now. Mikhail redshirted, Dante redshirted. I think Omari, was it Omari? Oh, it was Eric Paschal redshirted. All guys that played in the league. And and listen, and you think Jalen came in, he wanted to sit behind Arch for a year? If there was a portal, would he have gotten out? I don't think so. I think he's that kind of guy that he's mentally tough as far as and physically tough, and those are the kind of kids that they're looking for.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And Omari, he did. Your memory is sharp. Omari did redshirt, but that was an NCAA deal. They screwed Nova on that one. And you talked about that 2017 team. Oh, what could have been if Omari Spellman had been eligible and been able to play on that team?
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. He was good. He was there. He was playing that Summer Jam. It was great to see him. And again, like I said to you, I'm tight with a lot of. I try to stick around with the big guys because there aren't too many of them, Matt. Sonny and I on the Big East Rewind go back and forth. He was a guard, I was a big guy, so we go back and forth with the bigs and guards. So I try to keep with my guys. And O came running right up to me as soon as he saw me and gave me a big hug, which it was appreciated, but he was completely soaked from playing. but it was all good.
I'm sure you did that to a person or two in your time, and then
Yeah.
you're getting pretty good at this hosting thing. You're providing all these natural transitions. Let's go back. You watch practice, you watch these games so intently, and you think back to your playing days. 1985, obviously, is what you're remembered for, but 83 to 86, your time on the main line. What's the biggest differences in the game from when you played to where we are today?
The physicality, number one, the fact that the big guys are playing down low and not shooting threes, and not handling. I don't think Coach Mass would have been too happy if I decided to bring the ball up the floor. Just saying. I mean, I could be wrong. I doubt it though, but I don't think that would have been. And you know what? It was different times too. So he would do things. Mass would do things to intimidate, especially the first day of practice. He'd have 4 garbage pails, one on each corner of the court. And in case anybody was going to get sick, they didn't have to leave the court. You were right, So it was intimidating because no one wanted to be the guy to throw up in the garbage pail, But it was there. So it was totally different times, and and Mass was more of a yeller. I didn't hear Coach Willard raise his voice once, in anger or anything like that. It is early though. I've only been to a couple of practices. I'm sure he will as they get more familiar with each other. But Mass would get all over you and then give you a hug at the end of the day. Like said, listen, you're better than that. Come on, Or if Eddie made a mistake and he had been on Eddie for something, he'd come over and punch me in the chest. He goes, "Why you let him do that?" I go, well, "I didn't do anything." It was different times for sure. That's for sure, Matt.
Hey, you alluded to, the different volumes coaching. You used to go to Jay Wright's practices all the time. I always thought that was kind of interesting about Jay Wright's evolution because early in his career, he was, he has that GQJ personality, but he was a little bit of a taskmaster too, and he would get on people. He really seemed to calm down and take a bit of a different approach as his career progressed. And it just feels like that kind of is the way it works now with the athletes. You can get on them in a moment, but you can't ride them constantly.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants that. I mean, and Mass didn't do that either. It wasn't constant, And it's funny that you said that because towards the end of his life, we went down to visit him in Florida a bunch of times. I got to see him at practice, and it was funny because that's like at the beginning of this whole changing from you can't be too tough on everybody. kind of attitude. But it was funny because his assistant coaches were coached against me in high school. So they know Coach Mass as long as I did. So they would get me on the side. Hey, Coach Mass is getting soft. I go, what do you mean? He goes, he let the kid go to the training room for a hangnail. I go, listen, it's times are changing, man. You know, you don't want to lose the kid. So let him do what he has to do. And then he comes back. And if he plays hard, then great, you know. And Jay was like that too. I mean, Jay, don't let him fool you, man. Jay did get loud in practice. I've been witness to a few choice words, to a few choice players. But again, it was the same school that Coach Massimino came from. So, you know, it was all good at the end of the day. Listen, I tell my kids, we talk about this all the time. My daughter's a sports psychologist now, and we talk about it all the time, and that, you know, getting yelled at and stuff like that. And coaches, you know, players don't want to get they don't even want to get coached. You know, there's a difference between yelling at someone and yelling because you know that you can get more out of a kid. And you know, I would tell my kids, and they now coach a little bit. They said, look, if the coach is not yelling at you, that's when you should be worried. Not because the guy yelled at you and said that you can't do this or that. When he doesn't yell at you, that's when you know that you won't be playing much longer.
It's such a good point. It's such a different way of thinking about things that I think people lose track of. You know, there's so many legendary Rollie Massimino stories. I mean, probably too many to recount. You have made a second career out of telling so many of the good ones.
Yeah.
I was reading one not too long ago where it was about the '85 team. It was actually after a loss. It was Syracuse in the regular season where Rollie Massimino, who was known for his promptness, you guys couldn't get him awake and onto the bus on time. And he was after you guys lost a late night game. He had an early morning flight, and he was not feeling it the next day. And do you remember that at all? And what was Rollie like? Did you give him grief?
Remember him not being able to get to the bus, but I do remember the game that you're talking about, because in the 4 years that I played at Nova, we never won at the Carrier Dome. We hated playing there, and you always had to stay the night because the flights never, you know. So we were having a game against the Orangemen, and Pearl Washington was just killing everybody. And this was in '85 because Velcher Dawson was on the team. Okay, so somebody goes to the foul line, and Pearl trots over. You know, he had that walk where he was leaning over. And he put his arm around Coach Mass and he said, hey, Coach, you can't get mad. The guy just can't guard me. It's not his fault. He just, you know, put somebody else in. He just can't do it, you know. So it was matter of fact, you know. So we get in, and at halftime, I've never seen him so angry. He legitimately, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He hit the chalkboard so hard, he shattered the chalkboard, and he threw everybody back out, and he kind of sat on the bench in the second half and really didn't say much because he was worried himself. So we go. The one thing about playing at Syracuse is they have the best spread at any game after the game. Like, they have food for us to take on the bus or whatever, you know. So this was great. And, you know, I don't know what happened to me. I had a brain freeze or something. And I'm in there and I'm making a sandwich and getting everything together and for the bus ride. So he goes in and he says, sure, you know, eat up, Chuck. Eat up. Do what you do best. Eat. Make sure you get everything. I'm listening. So I should have known that was a warning. You know, like, don't say nothing to me. But I didn't. I said, hey, can you pass the mayonnaise? So he goes, what the hell do you think I am? The goddamn mayonnaise man over here? What are you, crazy? So Dwayne, thank God, Dwayne came in and go, hey, Chuck, you better get out of here. He pulled me out before Coach Mass killed me. He would have made me run suicides right there in the gym right after playing the game.
It would have been like a reenaction of the movie Miracle. You'd have been back out on the ice again.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
So that was the interesting thing I think people forget, and it is a valuable lesson that still is appropriate to today's game with that '85 team. Everybody remembers you guys as heroes, and deservedly so, because of what you were able to accomplish in March. But that was not an easy path through the season. No. That was a team that was struggling to find its footing, and a lot of people were, for lack of a better term, kind of labeling as underachievers, as a team that had high expectations and just wasn't putting it together, ended up on the bubble trying to get into the NCAA tournament, and Rollie benching everybody in that Pitt game to close out the regular season. What did you guys learn through that adversity, and how were you able to make it click in March?
Well, it was all Eddie, Gary, and Dwayne, to be honest with you. I mean, they decided after the Pitt game, they decided, well, they had a talk with Coach Mass, brought him in the office and said, hey, you guys are going to be remembered as the guys that didn't make the tournament. Is that what you want? What do you – and Prez was in there with them. Prez happened to be in the office. And they go, no, Gary said, you're going to remember us for more than just, we're going to do something special with this group. And all of a sudden – practice changed. It got more intense. These guys were not that they were fooling around before, but it got very different. The vibe was very different. It was all business, and the practices got really, really good. I mean, it was like a game every practice, And listen, we you had the white team and the blue team. The white team was always the opposing team's players, and we would play against the blue. And that kind of thing, but it was different. These guys were getting after it. They were trying to score. They were trying to kill us every time they played us. And all of a sudden, we get Pitt coming back at the Garden, and we take care of them. And we lose to St. John's. But now we didn't realize coming back that it went to 64 teams. That's the first year it went to 64 teams. So we're all sitting there like biting our fingernails, wondering, are we going to get in? And as it was, we got in, okay. And then he got pissed off that we were playing Dayton on their home first round.
I do love that. He went from worried that you weren't going to get in to immediately thinking that he got screwed by the NCAA committee. Only Rollie Massimino could do that quick of a turnaround. That was his true skill in life. But I do think people forget that. Not only did you almost lose that opening round game to Dayton, it was back and forth. You were down in the final minutes, but that was a true road game. The path that you guys took just to get to the Final Four between a road game against Dayton, the top seed in Michigan, and then obviously Len Bias in Maryland, and North Carolina finally getting over that hurdle. That was a wild path just to get to Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. And listen, the toughest game of them might have been the Dayton game. I mean, we only won by 2. Jensen gets the ball and curls around. Everybody's like, what are you doing? And it rolled in, and that's when he started to become Harold Jensen. His confidence started to soar, and he had the tournament of his life. I mean, he doesn't do that, we don't win. I mean, so that you could say it goes back to that layup in the Dayton game. I mean, that was when his coming out party a little bit, and then to go play Michigan. But frankly, the teams like Michigan and Memphis State and people like that, they were not ready for the physicality of the teams that played in the Big East. We were playing against. You got to remember, we lost 10 games that year. 5 of them were to the number 1 or number 2 team in the country, St. John's or Georgetown. And they were both very, very physical teams, especially Georgetown. And so, when you start putting that on somebody, they're not sure how to handle that, and then we got Lenny. And Lenny, earlier that year, had I think he had 35 or 36 on us, and they beat us at Cole Fieldhouse. And then we held them to 8. So that has never been done before or since. First time and only time he was held to single digits. Eddie did a great job. We switched because Plansky guarded him in the first game, and Mark will tell you that that didn't work out too well for him. But listen, Lenny was that kind of player, and Eddie took him in the second game. And we kept doubling down from the backside on him so he couldn't spin into the middle like he wanted to. And so that helped a lot. And we held him to 8 points.
Okay, so then came the North Carolina game. And obviously, if you're a Villanova fan and you know your history, you know the bowl of pasta story. But did you guys, as players, did it click for everybody when he was doing it? Because it is a little bit of an abstract thing that he was trying to do.
No one knew what the hell he was talking about. What's this guy talking about? Listen, we want to get back in the game and win this game, and he's talking about having a bowl of pasta with clam sauce and a lot of cheese on it. But what we realized was he said, just go out and have fun and play, and everybody's eyes lit up, like it was okay because, we had been stopped by them a couple of times. Well, Coach Mass was stopped by them a couple of times in the Elite Eight. And this was like he got to get over the hump. It was important for him to get over the hump and get to the Final Four. And then we came out in the second half, and man, it was a different team. It was like I think we were down 12 at half, and we wound up winning by 10 or 12 or something. It was a whole different team. So and then the rest was history per se after that.
Well, you take care of Memphis State, and you get to Georgetown in the championship game, which has been talked about ad nauseum. That's where your moment on the national stage comes. Everybody talks about your dust up with Reggie Williams, and I know you've become very friendly with Reggie over the years, but I still want to know what prompted that, because it's supposedly a dust up. You didn't do anything. You just got two hands shoved to the face.
Oh, I did. But here's what happened. Like, so my job on that team was to give Eddie a spell every, depending on who we're playing and the intensity of the game, etc. I would give him in anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 to 6 to 10, depending on, what was going on. So Patrick comes down and slams 3 balls in a row. Bam, bam, bam. And I'm like, whoa, they're starting to, is this heating up, And he goes, Chuck, go get Ed. I went, oh man, now he wants me to go in after Patrick just threw 3 down in a row. So we get in, and they let us hold the ball, which I couldn't believe Coach Thompson let us do that. Even Reggie, and I've talked with a lot of the guys in recent years, and they're like, what were we doing? And he goes, and they put Billy Martin on the top, so it was kind of weird. So they let us hold the ball. We come down. Prez takes a shot. I tip it up. Prez gets the board. It goes in. Here comes Dave Wingate. He's flying down the court. I'm ahead of Reggie. So my only thought, now we're up 1. My only thought was, hey, I got to put a hard box out on him, because if I don't, I'm going to incur the wrath of Coach Massimino, and that's a problem, And I knew at that point, I knew that if I didn't and he scored, I probably shouldn't even go in the locker room. Okay, that's how crazy it would be. So what happens is I hit Reggie with a good clean, like hip check, box out, and he turns around and gives me a half a shove and half a push in the face and turns around and runs away. My only thought at that time was, I know I'm not getting back in unless Ed gets in serious foul trouble or he gets injured, and neither of those we wanted to have happen. But I want to score. I have a chance to score in the national championship game, and it would have been 1-1. And I'm yelling at the official. I said, "What didn't you?" So he said nothing. Brian Harrington comes out, pulls me away. Coach comes out, pumping his fist, running in the locker room. And the wild thing about that, Matt, is their locker room was behind our bench and ours was behind theirs. So we had a pass. And those guys were snickering and laughing and like, this is no big deal. It's only 1 point. We're going to get you in the second half kind of thing. And we were so amped up to play. Coach came out and said, hey, that's bullshit. We're not going to put up with this stuff. This is, this isn't going to happen. They're not going to take advantage of Chuck. They're not going to bully us. They're not going to, So we were all amped just to get back out right away. And we come out and shoot 9 for 10 in the second half, which is insane because the only shot that we missed, Dwayne got it blocked by Patrick. We tease him about that all the time. So that's the answer to the trivia question. Dwayne McClain missed the shot in the second half. But
the guy who couldn't miss a free throw the entire tournament was the only guy that missed the shot, right?
Yeah. So what happened was now we get in the locker room after the game. I got 40 reporters in front of me. I go, what do you guys want to talk to me for? I played 3.5 minutes. They go, no, what happened with Reggie? So I've milked that now, Matt, for about 40 years. I don't know if I can get any more juice out of that, but I want to thank the people at the Villanova Business School for giving me my marketing degree because I've marketed that every which way you can for 40 years.
Well, it was between the way you sold it after the fact, the look on your face of not getting that foul call, and it makes so much more sense now to hear the inner monologue that you were thinking this was my chance to score. And then Rollie's reaction. My grandfather first generation in the country. He was the first guy in our family to go to college. He went to Villanova. So that's where the family connection comes. And, as families go, they don't communicate all that well from time to time. But the one thing they could always talk about was that 85 Villanova team. And I watched my grandparents and my uncles discuss that moment more than I can remember at any family gathering. And the one thing that always came up was, outside of the 9 of 10 in the second half, was you getting shoved and the fist pump.
Yeah, it's funny. And Reggie got it just the opposite. Like, what the hell did you do that for? So it's funny because we start doing our show, and Reggie calls Gene Smith and he says, "Can you think Chuck will have me on the show? I want to talk to him about this whole thing." So we have him on, and I say to him, "Hey, look, I want to say thank you for my 15 minutes of fame, first of all." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I go, "If you don't hit me in the face, nobody knows who I am, and that's it. It's over." So he starts laughing. I go, "I think I owe you a steak dinner or something." He goes, "Yeah, you owe me dinner." So Sonny and I went to the Syracuse-Georgetown game, and we went out to dinner with Reggie. We invited Michael Graham as well. Mike didn't show, but Reggie, we had a lot of fun with him. And we've been out together numerous times. I go down to some Commanders games. I have a buddy of mine who's got tickets, and Reggie comes to the games, and we tailgate and we laugh and kid around. And we don't even talk about the game anymore. It's all about just regular stuff. And the best was, though, I took him twice to a Villanova game on campus. And the first time, it was just so much fun watching people's head whip around. Like, what the hell are you two guys doing together, And it was great, including the Georgetown fans. They were like, what are you doing with that guy? So so it was a lot. And I introduced them to Jay, and Jay stopped and took a picture with him and with the two of us. And it was great. We had a great time. He's a really good guy. And I tell you right now, I don't want to pull the curtain too far back on the mystique of Georgetown, but as it turns out, those guys are the nicest guys in the whole league, believe it or not.
It is funny because that's what everybody says, and Hoya paranoia, it was a real thing back then. But you got to have, for some schools, you had to have a villain. Georgetown fit that bill, even if it wasn't a deserved bill. But it was a memory that will last you a lifetime, and it'll be a legacy that stays even after you're long gone. It's incredible what you guys were able to accomplish. And then you come back one more year on top of that. What was it like defending the championship and opening a new building?
Well, we got pretty popular. That was pretty cool. We'd call Garrett Hill or whatever and, say, hey, we want to get a pizza. I went Wyatt Maker and Mark or, whoever, and Dwight Wilbur. And they go, well, where are you? I said, we're in Wyatt's room. Okay, the usual, right? Yeah. We got a bunch of stuff. I said, yeah, bring it. We'll sign it. Don't worry about it. It was like that for a whole year. It was great. So, we'd go into a restaurant, people would stand up and start clapping and stuff like that. So that part was cool. But we did want to, and if you remember, Coach Mass was up for the New Jersey Nets job. So what happened was they had a big roast of Coach Massimino. Jimmy Valvano was there, and Billy Cunningham. A lot of people were there, and they were ribbing him about going to Planet Lovetron because Dawkins was with the Nets at the time. And so as captains, it was the senior class. It was RC, myself, Dwight, and Prez. We took the team over to his house. We walked up the street, went to his house, knocked on the door, and said, hey, we need to talk. And we sit in the backyard, and he ordered some pizzas and stuff, and there were tears, there were hugs, and he didn't really know what he was going to do. And he came in the next morning, and the first guy he ran into was Jake. And Jake was still in the wheelchair, obviously. And Jake went like this, and Rollie put his head down. He goes, if I'd have known it was going to come to this, I wouldn't have let you win the Georgetown game. So he was like, all right, don't worry. It's all good. I'm staying. So that's how we found out. So it was like we were reborn, and we really went to work. And unfortunately, we came up against a very tough Georgia Tech team with Dow Rimple and John Sally and Mark Price, and they got the better of us. We went to the second round. I don't think anybody was embarrassed about our showing because nobody even gave us a chance to get to the tournament with the team that we had. And, Doug West and Kenny Wilson and Gary Massey, who are now 3 Hall of Famers at Villanova, also contributed as freshmen. So it was pretty good. It was a pretty good team at the end of the day.
You alluded to some Raleigh stories earlier. What are the moments that stick out most to you about Coach Mass?
A lot off the court, because we would go visit him at his house, and he loved that. We'd have all the guys over in Florida, and it started out with Brian and I, and then it was Prez, and then Jensen, and then it kept growing and growing, and then the last time we were together, we had, I think, 15 players, and everybody's crashed out all over it. We all stayed in his house. There was a room upstairs that was exclusively for Brian and I, because it was like the Brady Bunch room. There was a bathroom in the middle, and there was a bedroom on either side. So I got my own bedroom, and Brian got his, which was pretty good, because so you just didn't have to step over a 6'8" guy to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, And if we didn't have enough room, he told one of his neighbors, "Hey, listen, why don't you go take a vacation? The boys need the house." He kicked them right out of the house. So the way the routine went was we would go. We'd get there Thursday. Friday we'd have a big, huge family dinner, just the team and obviously Coach Mass's family, and Mrs. Mass went right back into cook mode. And then the next day we'd go to the Northwood Kaiser game, and then the Super Bowl, and then we were out. And the Super Bowl was the year that New England made the big comeback,
Against the Falcons.
Yeah, against the Falcons. So we played the pools and the boxes, and Connolly Brown is running the box, and he says our coach is going to win. And he had to score backwards, so he gave Coach the money. Then he had to try to get it back from him, and Coach didn't want to give the money back. So it was a whole thing. But he kind of knew that this might be the last one, and we're sitting outside telling stories and going through stuff and stuff that he's never even heard of before, And so it was great to be able to have that kind of relationship with him, because he always preached family, and everybody knows that. And it's very easy to say that, but at the end of the day, we were there when he took his last breath. I mean, that's family. I mean, we were there from the beginning to the end, and it was awesome. I mean, there's a story that happened in Florida that's pretty good. We would go to practice on that Friday, and then Dwayne, myself, Brian Harrington, and Coach, we went to a place called Duffy's Sports Bar. Okay. So we had a snack and something to drink, and we're coming out, and Dwayne and I are on the curb, and Brian is walking with Coach Mass along the crosswalk, and there's a guy coming in the car around, and he's not slowing down. He's doing, I would say, between 20 and 25 miles an hour, So Brian yells, "Jump," and this guy hits Coach Mass and Brian with the car. Brian jumps up on the hood like Starsky and Hutch. Coach Mass had a Chivas Regal glass. He gets hit, and he holds the glass up. He never spilt a drop of whatever was in the glass. So now Dwayne and I go right for the driver, and the guy was probably in his 80s. He definitely shouldn't have been driving, an old-haired, gray-haired man. And so Coach goes, help me up. So he goes, "Don't worry, they're not going to hurt you." He tells the guy, he goes, "Listen, pal, you should seriously consider not driving. We were in the crosswalk." He goes, "I didn't see you. I'm so sorry. He goes, "All right, go home. Take it easy. Go home." So the people are saying, "You can't let him go home. He just hit you in the car." He goes, you got to go get checked out. You got to go to the hospital. He goes, "I'm not going anywhere." He goes, "My wife's got the pasta on." He goes, "If we don't get there, if I mess around and go to the hospital, it's going to be mush." He goes, "I like it el dente. I'm going." So we get in the car, and off we go. And he's calling all of his buddies, Mike Fratello and, Lasorda and all these guys, right? And nobody's answering the phone. And he's saying, "Well, I just got hit by a car, but you don't care." So we were teasing him. I said, "Hey, Harrison Ford's looking for a stunt double for Indiana Jones. Are you available?" So he's laughing. So the next day, Brian and I are up in our room, like I was telling you, and he comes out and he says, "Hey, Everson, are you ready? Let's go. You're going to make me late." I go, "You all right?" He goes, "Yeah, I got a black and blue on my cheek. I'm fine." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "You took a shot, man." He goes, "I know." He goes, "I'm going to be sore, but right now I'm okay." So we get to the locker room. The kids are getting ready for the game. And Mass looks at everybody and he says, well, I'll tell you something. I'm the toughest son of a gun in here. Ask Chuck. Chuck, tell him. I said, guys, Coach took a charge on a Toyota last night. I said, so if you're thinking about doing anything except diving on the floor for loose balls and not being tough, you better just go home now. I said, because he's the toughest guy in the room. And everybody was like, they couldn't believe it. And then they went out and won the game. But, yeah, it was stuff like that I remember more than anything to do with playing,
How much did it mean to him? It didn't end the way everybody would have hoped it would have ended during his time as a coach at Villanova, going to UNLV. And it took a little time for him to get back into the fold. How much did it mean for him the way that Jay reached out, brought him back in, and he became such a stoic figure on the campus when he came back there in his closing years?
That's a good question. It meant the world to him, Matt, because I tell you why. He went out there, and I worked with Mobil Oil at the time, so we would have our conventions out there. So I'd go, instead of I'd cut out at a lot of the events, and I'd go hang out with him, and we'd have dinner, or I'd go to the house or whatever, and and he confided in me that it was tough, out there. It was not what he thought it was going to be, as far as having all the Tarkanians people trying to disrupt the whole apple cart there. So I know he was very, very appreciative of Jay, and appreciative of the response that he got when he came back for I think it was for the 30th. He was mic'd up, and his team was mic'd up. They played against Jay's team, and I think Timmy Brando and Raph were doing the game, and they were talking to guys and stuff. It was really cool how they set it all up, and he came out and had a rousing applause, and they even did the streamers after the first basket. Oshefu made the first basket, and the streamers came out. They did that for Coach, and it was great. And so he was back in the mix, and every time he came back, he got nothing but adulation and love.
Well, you're such a tremendous storyteller, and you can just listen to you tell these Villanova stories all day long, and you've brought this talent and this gift with you to other fan bases now with your work on this Big East Rewind podcast that you've been doing here. It's just so much fun to watch you sit down with these legends of the Big East and pull these stories out from them. How did this come about, and how much do you enjoy doing it?
Well, first of all, I love doing it. Who knew I was going to be friends with some of these guys that I've never even played? They weren't even in the same time frame that I played. I've been out to lunch with guys like Sean L. Scott, and we took Coach Carnesecca for lunch after we did the show in his kitchen. But how it got started was Gene Smith did something called the Hoya Locker Room. And he only had Georgetown folks on. But he said, hey, look, I got Billy Martin. Why don't you come on with us and we can talk about 85 and, get your take, get his take. I said, great, I'll do that. As long as Billy's cool with that, I'll do that. And so we did it, and we had a lot of fun. And I said, I could do this for Villanova. And what happened was they had that 68, that the team, they had that podcast. And I think Jason Frazier was doing it at that time. So I didn't want to step on his toes. And I said, maybe we could do something with the Big East. And I called Sonny Spera, who, when I visited Syracuse, he was I stayed with him, and I said, hey, what do you think? You want to do this? So we had these other two guys who ran he ran a Twitter account called Big East Tourney Time or something like that. And they knew all about all the different Big East stuff. And so they got involved, and they sat down and we kind of talked online like we're doing now. And we had a lot of chemistry. And so I started calling people. I called Bill Raftery, and I said, hey, you want to be our first guest? He goes, yeah, absolutely. And then it went from there. And it's been a great ride, man. It really has. We're going into our 5th year this year. We've got 167 shows, and we've had a who's who on, from Hall of Famers and you know what it is? We try to take a 360-degree look at the conference. So we had Trangisi on, we had Dave Gavitt's son Danny on to talk about how that was made. We've had mascots, managers, players, coaches, referees some of the best guests were the referees. We've had Froggy Paparo on, Larry Lembo, and then of course the Hall of Fame coaches and Calhoun and Jay and Louis. We sat down in Louis's kitchen with him. It was awesome that we were able to get there and do that. He doesn't do that for just anybody. And then we had so much fun with him. We took him out for lunch, and he couldn't believe he was sitting with a Wildcat and an Orange man. Let's have fun. So it's been really great, and hopefully we can continue it for a long time.
A testament to how good the show is. Obviously, when you have the big names, everybody pays attention and is going to click on that button. But, I like to think of myself as knowing a good amount about Big East history. But you've had guys, I had no earthly idea who they were. But I'm clicking on it because you're going to get some good stories out of them.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this conference. And you've been around it for so long. It's just filled with characters. It's kind of, whether it's the old Big East or even this new iteration of the conference, it is people that kind of get what college basketball is all about and care about college basketball and can articulate how much they care about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the stories that have come out of it have been unbelievable. I mean, I'll give you a quick one. Willie Glass, we do our due diligence. Sonny and I kid around and say we're professional journalists. It's not like we just turn the lights on and got a show. So I do my I look up stuff on Willie. I know Willie, but I don't know him, and so I find out that he's first cousins with James Worthy of the Los Angeles Lakers. So I said, fun fact, Willie Glass is first cousins with James Worthy. I said, are you related to James Worthy? He goes, my family's down in North Carolina. James would come and play pickup. And they said, hey, is that your cousin? I said, yeah, that's my cousin. And James would go, yeah, that's my cousin. I said, so are you related or not? He goes, no. He goes, I play pickup with him. He goes, but it was in the St. John's. It was in the St. John's media guide that he was.
Welcome to the world of being a broadcaster. You got to double check and verify everything. You can't just trust what they write down.
Same guy. He used to go watch his brother play at the park down the street. So a lot of guys would play down there, including guys like Will Chamberlain, So he said, he goes, Chuck, this guy, my brother brings home this guy. And and he comes home and it's he said the guy was just thirsty. He was a great guy, pretty good basketball player. He comes in and he meets my mother, and my mother almost faints. It was Marvin Gaye that was playing basketball down at the park. So it's stuff like that you don't, the stories that you get from this, you don't hear anywhere else. I mean, stuff that was said on the bench, on the court. We had Michael Graham and Andre Hawkins, who had notoriously were the enforcers pretty much of the whole conference, and they had a fight in the '84 championship game, and Froggy Paparo threw Andre out, threw Mike Graham out of the game, and then came back, and they had the refs got together, and then they put him back in. So we had Froggy on with them. It was great. It was great. Just to hear the stories is what's my favorite part of the whole thing.
Well, you've gotten so many people, but obviously a long list of people you still want to get. If you could have any guest you haven't gotten yet, do you have a dream guest?
Yeah, we've been trying to get Chris Mullin for 4 years. I had his brothers contact him. I had Ron Stewart was his best friend, and my daughter went to St. John's when he was coaching there. So every time he says yes until I call him, then I get ghosted. But he was one. Walter Berry was one. We were lucky enough to get him. We were lucky enough to get Patrick and Otis Thorpe. We're looking for Mark Jackson. We're looking for Billy Donovan. And of course, AI. We would love to get AI, Ray Allen, and Kerry on at the same time. That would be cool, too.
Oh, man, that would be the mid-'90s Big East. That would be a good one. That would be fun. Yeah. Well, this was so much fun. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this, Chuck. And hopefully we'll be able to get some more time for you to talk about the team when we get into the season.
Yeah, anytime. Just let me know. I appreciate it. This is always fun. I love doing this stuff. And thank you very much for having me.
Make sure you check out the podcast, Big East Rewind. Most of you have probably already seen it. If you're watching this show this deep, you love the Big East. But if you haven't seen it yet, it is made for people us. That'll do it for this edition of Big East Energy's Holy Nova. I'm Matt Janis for David White and our guest, Chuck Everson. Thanks so much for being with us as this was Holy Nova.